Brothers WISP. The Brothers WISP, Brothers WISP.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Brothers WISP number 195. I am Greg Soul from the motherland here in Texas. We have a couple of beautiful smiling faces along with us today. We have, I'm going to start in my top left. We have Jeremy Austin. Where are you from, dude?
I am from and still am in Alaska. It's been most of my life now, and I'm reconsider it some days, but most days it's pretty good to be here.
Yeah, explains so much about your personality. Yeah.
I had little to do with the choice, right?
All right. And then we also have John Osmon. Where are you from, dude?
I am also from a place with an A, but it's Albuquerque, almost at the other end of the contiguous 48 states. Closer to you, Greg.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Ish. You're a long way across West Texas to get over there to you. Yeah, I can never remember where you're from. I can never remember if it's Arizona or New Mexico. I was just thinking to myself, it's like someplace hot and forbidding. I'm like, where's this guy from?
I have to laugh a little bit when you talk about Texan distances being long, but I have driven across Texas. It is pretty wide.
Well, there's nothing there, dude. It's so boring. At least like your long drives, I'm sure, are beautiful, right?
Yeah, they are.
Yeah. So anyway, that's that. Yeah, don't rub it in or anything. Okay, we're cool. All right. So we don't have any new Patreons this time around. For the people that don't know, you go to patreon.com/Brothers WISP. You sign up, you get access to Little Brothers WISP Slack, where these fine fellas are very active in there. A lot of good discourse. We also have not picked up any new sponsors, but then again, I haven't been chasing any new sponsors. I think now that we have been consistently back and we are picking up a cadence, I might reach out and poke at a couple of people and see what we can get. But if you do want to sponsor us, feel free. We'll do an ad read, and I usually make my guests read part of the ad read, which is absolutely enjoyable for me.
Oh yeah, I'm appearing as myself today, even though I have the name on the shirt. We've been a sponsor before. Definitely worth checking, Greg. See if we can if we get some episodes out. It might be fun to spin that sponsorship back up.
For sure, man. And I've got some stuff in here that you are rather knowledgeable about, so I'm gonna be picking your brain either way. So there you go. Yeah, you should have curled that mustache. I should
have. Dang.
Yeah, it's like Samson's hair. You know, it's like you cut it off, you don't curl it up, man. It's like everything starts falling out. All right, let's jump into the thing. So I had a little bit of MikroTik stuff. You know what? It's so funny. I'm just falling back into old habits. I always end up having a whole bunch of MikroTik stuff in all of these old episodes, and apparently the new episodes as well. I don't know. It's like my favorite thing to talk about, apparently.
And the pace of Sorry, John.
No, go ahead.
I say the pace of development has really stepped up, Greg. There's just a lot more to talk about, too.
Yeah.
For years, it was like, when is V7 going to come out? We can always fall back on that. We can't fall back on that anymore.
Mm-hmm. The unicorn. Yeah. Andrew Thrift still has it as his little avatar in Little Brothers WISP. It's a long time running joke. I'm assuming it's got to be just like everybody else. They're starting to utilize AI to co-develop. So, you're absolutely going to be shipping stuff a lot more frequently, right?
Well, I hope that also comes with the corresponding attention to detail, because velocity isn't the only way to measure code quality.
For sure. Well, it's like I have some buddies that are really old school programmers. So I've got one, Jimmy, and he was kind of one of the holdouts on really embracing AI. But now he's like, dude, I don't even write code anymore. He's just like, I just review it. And he's like, whenever it makes a plan, it's discussing what it wants to do. I'm like, no, you should do it this way. That's not very efficient. And of course, it's sycophantic. So I'll be like, oh, you're right. That's a great idea. But yeah, he just does code review. And he also said he just like builds up tons of tests. So he's really just, instead of a programmer, I guess he's more like a manager now. Like he pretends like they're employees.
I believe that's really the case. You end up being more of a product manager and project manager, and if you have expertise in that field, you can bring all of that to bear. I'm definitely doing a lot of similar things, and I agree. I've had the cases where Claude says, "Thanks for working through this with me," and I'm like, "Come on, somebody prompted that." Most of the time, it sticks to business rather than flattery.
Yeah, for sure. He's also said, though, it is still perfectly happy to just build the scaffolding of something and not actually put the code in there. hence the testing being important parts of the process. It's not like he's shipping stuff that just has scaffolding, but like it'll essentially say, hey, here's the completed product. And then he's like, oh yeah, it looks like it's there, but there's big portions missing. So you still do have to watch it, cat's away, the mice will play sort of thing.
Agreed.
All right. Well,
Sorry about that. I lost my microphone and headset and I had to swap around.
Nobody would know other than your audio quality just like doubled. Like it sounds so much better now.
Yay.
You also look like every trucker from the 90s. I don't know why they always had to have the giant headsets.
They still do. I just saw some the other day. I was in Santa Rosa, New Mexico, and stopped at a truck stop and was like, that's still a thing.
Yeah, I don't know why. Maybe it makes them feel like they're in the Navy or something, or they're on like an aircraft carrier. They like just feel awesome.
I will say, if you're wearing something for a long period of time, having the right set of earphones or headphones is really important. I tend to wear over the ear, to go into nerd equipment for a minute. I use a decked headset, which has got super long range and pretty decent audio quality because it's essentially uncompressed streaming, 64K or something like that. And earbuds, I can wear them for a long time, but eventually it starts to make the cartilage hurt. So it's nice to have some equipment to swap around with. I can definitely understand why wearing something with big pads like these Grados are it's very comfortable for long wear.
I don't know, man. Like I can't do. I don't like to do the big ones because my ears are essentially dinner plates attached to the side of a human's head, and so like no matter how big the headphones are, they always kind of press, and so after a while they kind of hurt a little bit. But I've upgraded to, as of, I don't know, man, like 6 months ago, like the Pixel Buds. And man, I have loved these things. I got a coworker that's got, because I only know this word because he says it so much. He's got like misophonia, where like sounds like will enrage him. And so whenever I'm trying to like have a conversation, I always have to be doing something. And so I would be doing stuff and the sounds would just be absolutely driving him crazy. And now, dude, I'll have these in and I'm talking to him and I'm like vacuuming the floor, I'm like doing pickleball. Like people hear absolutely nothing. And so it's definitely a godsend to have like the active noise canceling in your microphone.
Good tools are always some of the best things to have around. They do the things the right way. It's like what we were talking about, MikroTik. You can do almost anything with them.
For sure. Great segue, John.
I try, I'm doing it backwards because we already talked about MikroTik.
The consummate professional. Yeah. All right, well, let's talk about some other stuff. One of the new features that they just popped out, and I'm not sure how usable this is. Obviously, they would make it because somebody was asking for it or they see value in it, but they now have the ability to do Netinstall from another MikroTik device. And so Netinstall is kind of like a low-level install, like essentially like whenever you would boot like a Cisco router to a TFTP server and it would pull like the image sort of thing, right? Like it's just kind of pulling it over the wire. So used to, they had a Windows app, and they still have the Windows app that would allow you to run kind of a little, I think it's still TFTP. I don't really know what's in there under the hood, but it just runs a little server, listens for like the Pixie boot message coming from the router and will connect and then just push the image over. But now you could do that essentially from another MikroTik device. The only thing I could think of in my head is like, I've got a remote site with a bunch of MikroTik stuff out there and one's acting a fool, or I need to net install one remotely. Maybe that's an option. You just have like a tech on site or like somebody in the office that like holds the button for a second and reboots it. And when that, like, can you find like a real value in that on your side?
That's probably more a question for John. Yeah,
I certainly see one. I mean, we have. I'm working with some folks right now that are doing a statewide education network, and we're getting the NOC spun up. And the folks that are actually running that right now were asking, "Gee, how can we do this stuff? And what happens if the thing's remote? What do we do with it?" And there's enough MikroTiks that are lying around that you could, kit one up and carry it with you and just have things stored, either on a USB or whatever, and always be able to do things, whether or not you have a Windows box or a Linux box or anything else, or let your techs use what they want and just have that and just have the MikroTik sitting there.
Yeah.
So
Does this require the containerization feature, or is this something that's its own package?
I haven't looked at it, so I can't honestly answer any of that. I'm going to stop talking now.
Yeah. I did a little poking around. I think there is a specific package to do the Netinstall piece.
Okay.
And they said there's one piece of hardware that it isn't supported. I think maybe like MIPS BE, maybe something like that.
Pretty
Yeah.
old these days.
So-
Yeah, the I played around a little bit with containerization in 724 release candidate. This is now 724.1 beta that has the Netinstall. I think it makes a little more sense as a package, because if they have ported it to the the native kernel there, then it means you can use a much less capable router to act as that machine that, like John's talking about, have kind of a just a little cheap machine that can sit there and not have to do anything else or not do much else. Maybe your craft router that's providing your tower Wi-Fi or something like that, where you've got this little Hail Mary, something in your pocket in case you need it,
Yeah, and I was frequently at my sites, I was doing out-of-band management using a MikroTik device with like a SIM card stuck into it. So, maybe your out-of-band device, your out-of-band management device, right, that you're going to be backdooring into anyway. This could be a good opportunity to use that as well there.
And if it requires layer 2, perhaps you can even just pipe that layer 2 across your network and handle that, in a emergency situation. I certainly have really appreciated having RoMON and MikroTik, another example of that remote management that just relies on basic connectivity and allows you to do a lot of cool stuff. So if you could do Netinstall over RoMON, that'd be super cool.
Yeah, RoMON has saved my buns so many times. Right, and essentially RoMON it's like a protocol to go MikroTik to MikroTik without having to actually do any routing. You don't even have to have IP addresses on the interfaces, and you can connect from one MikroTik to the other. So there's so many times where, as long as you have it activated, like, and it's up and moving, like, you can kind of backdoor into a device. And I gotta say, yeah, it's like I don't always do everything right. Sometimes you just get it done, and then a little bit down the road something goes wrong, and you need to get in there in some weird fashion, and this has absolutely saved me.
But or even security guys, I was going to say, how many security guys have walked up and asked you, gee, how does that work?
None, because I never interface with those people.
Yeah. No, it is well managed, and it's what's allowed me to keep managing networks that I'm 8 hours from, that I haven't touched in years physically. There's just no reason for me to physically touch a network anymore on the engineering side with all the tools at our disposal.
No, I get it. You're too good for that now. Fine.
No,
let everybody else
I just
get their
have a
hands
day
dirty.
job.
Yeah. Let the peasants, let the little people go out there. Yeah, the poors, they'll touch the routers. Yeah,
that's my rule anymore. If I'm involved in this, we did something wrong. Somebody needs to take my place.
I'm kind of dogfooding that a little bit, John, with my own stuff. So, because I have a home network with, I guess, probably a little more than maybe not in the Brothers WISP audience, and in our, in Slack, there's a lot of fairly nerdy people here. I've got like 11. I have an 11 server cluster in my utility room, and 10 gig backbone, and a lot of switches, a lot of wireless access points, and I've been working on that. Other than I'm just saying, like, hey, I'm just the remote hands. If you need a wire moved, make me go do it. And that means building tools to interface securely with, MikroTik APIs and CLI, and building out proper sources of truth like NetBox, and making sure that everything is really deployable and redeployable. And it's kind of fun that I get to play around my own stuff, before I have to go productize it for a client.
Okay, so you're actually using it. You're moving forward and actually using it to advance onto the work side. I'm at that point where I really want to do all of the automation and things like that, but none of it is big enough to actually justify it. So I'm really kind of falling back on spreadsheets and having LLMs go, yeah, I can read that. Let me go.
That was my argument. It feels to me like Claude is like your poor man's Ansible, right? You can just say, okay, this is a one-off. I think you definitely get to the point, John, even with a smaller deployment, where it's probably time to do it right. But now the argument against doing it right is much diminished, right? If it was all the headroom that it took to go spin up all of the correct tools, well, it's a lot easier now. So maybe it is better to do it right the first time.
it's super easy to put together prototypes and go hand to people that actually do programming and say, hey, I want this to work all the time, as opposed to just, when I run it, if it does something wrong, it's okay. I can go fix it, or it's okay if it breaks in the middle of this process. But you really need the pipelining to work in production environments. But now you can hand things to some of the juniors and say, hey, look at this. It works. Follow this workflow, get the kinks out and go play.
Yeah. And you know what, John, that is essentially the exact same thing I've been preaching to all of my customers are Fortune 500. Some of them are actually Fortune 5. And everybody's trying to figure out how they're going to do AI in their environments. It's interesting because a lot of these people, some of the systems that we're helping automate, they're processing billions of dollars. So that's like a whole level of pressure and stress that I've never, I had pressure and stress on me before, but I feel like that's a different level than I'm accustomed to. So what we tell these people is kind of exactly like what you're saying, John, build a little test network. And I know that's so hard to do, but with MikroTik, it's not hard to do because you could still get a ton of MikroTik kit for sub $30 if you want to use physical pieces. You can also use CHR devices, which are virtualized, and you can do the free ones. You can only move a megabit of traffic, right? But you can still do all the configuration.
If you're testing routing, I did exactly that in GNS3, did a complete digital twin. And this is before we had all the automation tools. Now there's no reason why you can't build a tool which says, hey, go replicate this entire running network in CHR, and now we'll go do the surgical test that you define the test, make the changes.
That's what I love doing.
No reason not to do it.
Yeah, and I love telling automation, once you have it up and set, I love saying, hey, this is what I'm trying to accomplish. Let's build this thing. And you can prototype, you can fire against it. It's going to fail over and over and over. You iterate, you get it working, and you say, okay, give me an exported config that I can use to apply to my different devices. Give me a template that I can use. And so then you take that and then you move that into a lot of these people have test dev prod, right? Because they're really big organizations. So then they'll elevate it up to their next level of testing, and then they'll finally move it into production. But even if you just have a little network, just tiny little test network, and you've got an actual production network, maybe this is something Chad would do today because he's the endless tinker guy. Maybe he would actually do it this way instead nowadays. But yeah, just all the dirty stuff, all the I don't want to get my hands gross, things you don't want to do anymore. You can just have the automation do it, or rather the AI do it. And then that's what we're also telling people is figure it out, have AI discern that, and then tell AI, turn this into an Ansible playbook. And then you use that to actually push it into production, or config as code, or template, or whatever it is, right? Whatever makes sense to you in your environment. So.
For a long time, I've had a series of blogs that I was trying to put together, and I got about a third of the way through. It was just going to talk through IGPs, BGP, talks about policy-based things and how you can implement a least cost policy, for a small ISP. And one of the things I really wanted to get to was to have, when it got done, to have the description of what we were doing and implement it in, on a Cisco router, on MikroTik, on Junipers, and on maybe Vios. And I have gotten to the point that it's taken so long to do it, I now don't have to do it because I can let AI translate between all of them. I can just give it the intent and say, please write something for me. And it's actually pretty close anymore. I was rather impressed.
It's interesting. So all this kind of kicks up a lot of things I've been thinking about. And I think on my server stuff, so we have a little cluster that I've owned and operated data center space that's my own for 15 years with a group of people. So I let Jimmy, he does most of the server work. I do most of the networking work, let people work in their strengths. But one of the things I do now is I use AI so much on my server infrastructure. And I've gotten to the point where I can pretty much trust it. If it breaks something, it's going to be able to figure out and fix it on its own pretty easy, which is astounding to me. When I first started working with it, I was doing tons of snapshots, and I'd let it do a little server thing. I'd run a bunch of testing, then I'd delete the snapshot. And I kept doing that. And eventually I realized even if it makes a misstep, it can usually fix it pretty well, right? Because it's on VMware or Proxmox, and it can still get to the host. And I was like, that's awesome. It's amazing for troubleshooting. It can correlate so many things that a human could never keep in their head to be able to do that quickly. And I was like, it's too bad we can't fully rely on that in networking. And that's what worries me, is that I've noticed that people are now leaning on that for like their networking things, and that's great when stuff's working. But when the network breaks, you can't get to that piece of equipment anymore to troubleshoot like as easily as you can with AI. So, is there going to be a gap where people are going to stop like learning this stuff? Like to your point, John, it's like, do I need to even teach people this stuff anymore because AI can do it? Well, what happens when we forget how to troubleshoot networking stuff, and then we can't have AI connect to it to actually fix it for us?
Go back to the 70s.
What
Go back
happened?
into the 70s and think about all the people in engineering schools that were complaining, oh, those kids with those darn calculators. They don't need a calculator. We got
My slide
log
ruler
tables and everything else.
Yeah. Am I shaking my slide ruler at all these kids? Is that what I'm doing?
And then in the 80s when I was doing I was doing engineering stuff, it was it's all that CAD stuff and no one's going to know how to do any drafting anymore. It just goes on. I mean, how many people know actually how their cars run anymore? I mean, we lost all the mechanical linkage through, the 80s and 90s, and it's all computer controlled now anyway. So you can't just pull over on the side of the road and go, oh, tweak out the carburetor. I'm going to lean out the carburetor a little bit because, it's running a lot. You don't do those things anymore. And nobody seems to care because the reliability and the power is so much more than it used to be on the cars, and the handling. And I think the same is going to happen with this. This gets into the network automation world of everybody's network is a snowflake. We need to stop that. How do we stop those pieces from being the predominant factor out there?
Well, I also wonder, all right, so let me shake my slide ruler again just a little bit. I work with a lot of customers too that are air gapped, like their networks cannot touch the internet. And so unless you have a local LLM that is of sufficient complexity, which most people don't, to do like heavy network troubleshooting, it's like, and you can't network get to these devices, it's going to be a lot more problematic. But then the other argument is you have good out of band management, all your stuff, and then problem solved, right?
It, really comes back to that best practices are still best practices. And if you have something that can implement those best practices more consistently and faster, you will come out on top. And at the risk of us slipping closer toward, idiocracy where nobody knows how to fix anything anymore, I think what should happen, if we look at human history, is that the class of things that we determine worthy of our attention changes, and that acts as a force multiplier. So you're still going to have people who will have to have expertise, because the only thing that an LLM knows is what humans have produced already. They can't produce anything real. So that may become a smaller slice of society, but that's probably a necessary trade-off.
Yeah. And I was just thinking, I can see in my head AIing most of the stuff we do away. It's just that was the one, and it's not just because I've done it for so long. It's because it's the one where, like, when it's broke, are you going to reliably be able to get those tools in there to actually do the investigation piece? That was the only hang up. I genuinely have no like loyalty to it because of some thing.
I definitely think like on the systems administration side, when we have the folks with the deep knowledge of Linux and networking as well, because not everybody is proficient in both fields, and there's a consideration that our job really never was, if we think about programming, your job was never to write code. It was to solve problems. And so if you think that programming is only writing code, then you are perhaps challenged by the idea that you might not be wanted to write code anymore. But we're still going to want people to solve problems. So I don't see that. I see that as just a clarification of the functions of what we do. It's not a threat.
Yeah. If I was a programmer, I feel like that would be a relief for somebody to say, hey, you don't have to like bang at the keyboard all day, every day anymore.
Well, if you do it right, you can focus on the parts that were actually fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, the like architecting and like making cool things happen as opposed to just hammering away and like, let me figure out. God, because I remember like I would be working on something for like 6 hours. I'd make really good progress and I would have to step away for an hour to do something. And it would take me 45 minutes to get my brain back to where it was. Like, like what was I just working on, all the pieces? And yeah, like those were never exactly fun times. The end products were good. And like solving the problems was the most fun part. I feel like
The problems are the key. I mean, that's what people pay us for. We're supposed to be solving the problem as it is. If you're spending more time fighting the syntax than fighting the problem, is it a tool problem or is it what is it? Then that's as the tools evolve, it gets so much easier. I think I saw somebody talking, instead of calling it vibe coding, they call it leaky. They call it a leaky compiler. Because we went from wiring things up to punching in instructions to using assembly to using programming languages. And now we can just talk to it in English and we get a program out. It may not do exactly what you want. It may do exactly what you want, but it's getting easier and easier to tell something what to do, particularly when things that are already solved. As Jeremy, or as we were saying earlier, if it's not been solved before, the LLMs are unlikely to do anything useful except maybe trigger something in your head to go, oh, I should have thought about that, and think along those directions.
When you put that progression like that, John, it really does seem like a natural one where we say we want to keep solving these problems at a higher abstraction level. And there was certainly a time, and there is a time today, you think of like John Carmack going and writing some critical bit of loop in assembler because the compiler could not optimize it as well as he could. Well, even those days are mostly gone now in terms of the level of complexity that a compiler can operate at in order to produce heavily optimized code. The having to pop down the stack and work on it, get your hands dirty, is increasingly a diminishing return, I think.
That piece there of the optimization on the compiler side has largely turned into put it in an ASIC, in my mind. Instead of trying to eke everything you can out of a general purpose CPU, just make a piece of silicon that does that and offload it. It's not true for everything, but it sure seems like that's how we solve a lot of our problems anymore.
Yeah. Well, the only problem with that is you'll make a piece of hardware that does a good job, and then all the AI companies will buy it up for the next 2 years. It's like you're not gonna be able.
Let's not talk about hardware right now. RAM prices. Yeah, I have heard multiple reports from people who've been pricing out. We priced out a server 7 months ago, and the PO kept getting postponed, and it's now literally 4 to 5 times what it was, in just a year's time, which is crazy, but it's real.
Yeah, a lot of my customers are stuck in one of two spots. There's a fork in the road. People that did a lot of on-prem, because let's be honest, if you're doing compute on your own stack or you're in the cloud, it is way cheaper to do it in your own stack, like hands down across the board. Maybe there's some sacrifices, like you get better availability tools, right? If you're running in multiple regions in the cloud and things like that, where you would have to like duplicate that. It just gets more complicated on the configuration side of your stuff, but it's always cheaper, at least with every customer I've ever worked with. It's always cheaper to like run it inside your own data center. Like if you want to do all of that stuff. But now this fork in the road is hardware has gotten so expensive that they're stuck, where it's so absorbently expensive for them to like refresh their equipment that they're either staying on what they have and they're just going to get more life out of it, which honestly, let's be frank, most people have good or at least the big Fortune 500s I work with, they have good refresh cycles on their hardware. So they're not just sitting on really old equippment. So that means that, they're still probably okay on the equipment they have for I mean, all of our lab stuff is built on refurbed hardware. So it's bought from those people that have good refresh cycles, and that equipment keeps running forever, or they're forced to where they have to go into the cloud. So it's interesting. I think the AI equipment shortage is going to force a whole bunch of companies into the cloud because it's becoming a little too expensive for them to buy their own hardware. So it's this
That's
interesting spot I find people in. And
but isn't it still going to be similarly expensive for refresh cycles for the actual cloud providers? Or you're just saying because they have so much extra capacity right now that's already amortized?
Well, what's interesting too is we've seen a bunch of our customers, the cloud providers are saying, well, they're the customers going and say, hey, I need to actually scale up this next year. I'm going to need X, Y, Z more compute, and the cloud provider is saying, sorry, we don't have that for you. At least on the generation of equipment they're on, they're going to have to kind of migrate internally inside the cloud because they have resold so many of their resources to the AI companies.
Right.
All of that spare compute they used to have, they've resold that over the AI, and so they're consuming most of it. So a lot of the cloud providers are really starting to squeeze customers again.
You've just hit on something else we were already talking about. Okay, talked about the efficiency of being able to, eke everything out of the code and everything else. We have been living for the last 25 years on Moore's Law, with the fact that we effectively had infinite compute and memory. We could do whatever we wanted with it. So much so that some people were willing to go put a lot of money into the CapEx side so that other people could pretend that they didn't need to do the CapEx and just turn their compute into an OpEx piece, which is great early in the game as you're scaling up. But as you point out, when you get to the point where you're at scale, you probably want your own gear. Once you get to a certain point, the hyperscalers started building their own OCP and things like that. The whole idea of being in control of that is what's controlling your costs. But if we run back into the 50s and 60s, think about what the military contracts were like back then. When you bought something, it was for a 20 or 30-year lifetime that they expected that to run. And in 15 years or so is when they started doing refresh cycles so that it was still working. I remember in the 90s when things that had been put in the 60s were finally being pulled out. And everybody's like, oh, look how old this is. And we started getting used to this 3 or 4 year refresh cycle because Moore's Law gave us so much more compute that in 3 years, the power savings and the work we got out of it was enough.
Power savings has been a big one.
It gives you enough reason to go ahead and rebuild this. This is one of the pieces that's been hitting me about, I thought data centers in space were really silly until I realized that once you put it up in space, if you can get it to run for 20 years, it'll run for 20 years. And it won't take up any more space, and you don't have to keep powering it because it took its power supply, the panels up with it. And as long as that thing's up and running, okay, maybe it drifted too far away from the earth and it's got too high a latency. Doesn't matter. Someone might buy that compute because you can sell it dirt cheap because you have no OpEx. It's all the CapEx up front. So there's a lot of these, business pieces that wander through all of this that drive how some of these businesses are running. And I don't know where it's going to go. I just know that it gets easier to use the stuff anytime, and the cast off stuff that, people that are following the 3-4 year life cycles, everything they're casting off is so much faster than anything I ever had in my hand before that. I'm just really happy when I get one.
Yeah. We bought 7-year-old servers to refresh our infrastructure this year. We just did it. We bought one server before the prices went insane, and then we bit the bullet and paid like quadruple for the other ones. Anyway, I digress. Our whole 3 stack of servers uses the same equivalent power as one of our servers in the old generation. It's crazy. So to your point, just how much more efficient you are on power, that's going to save you a ton of money. That's also reduced heat. So you don't have to remove that from the environment. So it's just like it's savings on savings on savings. And we have more RAM and compute in one of those boxes than we did the entire stack.
That's why I'm excited to see Proxmox supporting ARM now officially. We don't yet have like smaller boxes, low power boxes that have really hit the market yet. There was one company that had done I don't know if it was a 1U or not, but it was a bunch of really tiny ARM modules. So it's like a little hypercluster all in one box. And what I want, since my cluster is primarily archival storage, I don't actually need a lot of compute. What I want is like the minimum amount of RAM and CPU per storage drive. And in a perfect world, I'd be able to attach a drive directly to the storage network with one CPU and enough RAM to handle it, and it'd be no other points of failure, and that would draw like 10 watts. At 10 gigs, it's hard to do because 10 gigs draws a lot of power. But
About 12, 15 years ago, I had a friend hand me a drive, and it had this weird dongle at the end of it. And I was like, what is this all for? And he says, well, the ARM is on the hard drive.
Yeah.
And so it actually had, it was actually sitting there running Linux on there. It was a serial port that popped off, and it was really kind of cute. But
like had an Ethernet port out the back, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was just, you had to throw something on there to actually talk to the SATA port in order to get to those things. And it was very interesting to see, but I didn't see it go anywhere from a production standpoint.
Minimal storage blade. But back to the topic of rising prices. I mean, clearly this consumption is still a bubble because there aren't actual customers yet willing to pay the costs of what is really going into AI. So how much longer are we going to suffer? We will prognosticate for a moment.
Yeah. Well, I've seen. Who knows what's going to happen? To your point, Jeremy. None of the AI companies are making money. I think none of them can predict making any money until after 2030 has already passed us, right? We're into a new decade before that actually happens. And I'm also seeing big customers like AT&T. They are using a ton of AI inside, and they have shifted. I think they said somewhere between 70 and 80% of all of their workloads to internal open source models. So they're not even paying the big boys.
Yeah,
they're using frontier models for, say, like app dev, but literally everything else, which is the bulk of what they're doing, they're using free models inside. So it's like if more and more people shift to that, what's going to happen?
Apple just put out that M5 box that's clearly intended for doing local models.
Mm-hmm. So my guy Justin, who does a lot of dev, has converted a machine internally to just use that. Jimmy, my guy, that's a big programmer, he picked up some NVIDIA box. Like the company supplied him with some NVIDIA. It's some special appliance that's just AI
like
offload.
An eGPU or just like a dedication?
A Spark. There you are. Yeah. So he got one of those. So yeah, it's interesting. People have these little pets, these little Tamagotchis that are sitting next to him now, doing all of their AI crunching. And honestly, my laptop over here has has 2 GPUs. It's got a monster in there, and I am doing AI offload on that thing all the time with my stuff. So at some point, we're going to do more and more local models, which means that's going to pull revenue away from the big boys. So it's their race to solvency is gonna get even longer. It's gonna, instead of a sprint, it's gonna turn into a marathon.
Not only are we gonna destroy society, we're also gonna destroy tech at the same time. The whole system's gonna collapse.
Yeah.
You heard it here first.
All right, little omission of doom and gloom. Let's transition back to some more fun things. Now that we're bringing it back home. Let's see, on the MikroTik list here, something else Thrifty pointed out, which I think is pretty cool, is he's saying that got announced IPsec VTIs coming to RouterOS 7.25 via XFRM. I haven't done a ton of research on this, but essentially, from what I understand, it's creating a virtual interface, VTI virtual tunnel interface. So it'll show up on MikroTik RouterOS as just like a regular interface, except whenever it's leaving your device, it's actually creating an IPsec tunnel to something else. So you get to treat it like it's any interface. Because, by default, IPsec interface, like if you create an IPsec tunnel to somewhere else, it just kind of magically grabs the traffic and then shoots it over. You don't really see it as an interface. You can't interact with it as an interface. So now you can just...
it's a route path. Yeah.
You could just treat it like a regular interface. Just add a routing protocol to it, and it will be discoverable, and you can route traffic across it instead of having all of these extra hops you have to jump through. I remember back in the day, it was also kind of a pain in the butt for fragmentation on IPsec traffic, right? If it's just leaving and you have do not fragment bit set on some of that stuff, you can run into issues where traffic just kind of disappears out of the ether and you don't really get information back. But if you have a virtual interface that it's attached to, you can put the MTU on that. It just makes things cleaner in that respect as well.
Allows you to treat it like any other tunneling technology, which
Yeah.
I rely on like all of the types of tunnels. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing it. I don't know that I have an immediate application for it with the stuff that I'm doing, but I'm always you know, not trying to be like a complete bleeding edge adopter, but at least have some idea of what's going in. And that hardware acceleration is going to be really important because, if you're trying to do anything securely point to point, that often is your biggest bottleneck. And you look at, boxes that are rated for, yes, we can pass X gigabits. And then it's like, well, if you actually encrypt it, it's like 10% of the actual payload. So yeah, it's good to have more options there.
I think that's something a lot of people forget about too is how much throughput can I get, especially as I start loading this stuff up. Maybe you got road warriors, you got a bunch of people out remote that you want to, although I've seen so much less reliance on road warriors needing to VPN back to the corporate network anymore. Cause so much stuff is like cloud, like your email, you're getting that through Gmail or some other service, right? Where it's already encrypted over there. If you're getting to your file store, it's going to be coming off your Google Drive or, like your
Zero Trust,
SharePoint, yeah, stuff like that. So it's like, I don't know.
We're getting to what people should have been doing to begin with, instead of thinking that the network as a perimeter had any type of safety and, at all. It was like, no, that was just because you think that doesn't mean it's true. Just shut up and encrypt things from end to end.
Right.
I think that's one of the reasons why they put IPsec inside, V6. It was just, hey, I'm going to telnet. Well, I mean, if everybody had moved to IPv6, would we have secure shell? Because we would just telnet and tell it, no, make sure you encrypt with IPsec. It would just be part of the protocol.
That's interesting thought.
Yeah, that is it. I don't do much like highly encrypted. The only thing like I'm trying to cast my mind about, like the only thing I'm doing through tunnels right now is if I have remote resources that I need to get in and they're like behind some NATed device, I'll have them tunnel back home so that I can backdoor to these things.
Sure. But there you said NAT. Just if we had IPv6, you would have unique addresses.
Fair. That's fair.
Yeah, I would be able to just direct connect to that thing.
My kind of stack agnostic solution to this right now, Greg, is I just run between all services. I just run a tunnel. It's typically ZeroTier, but not always. I run a tunnel, and then the egress points of that are all, HTTPS. They're all secured by two-factor and some kind of, usually Cloudflare as well. So I'm connecting to my resources exactly the same way, regardless of where I am on the globe. And if I have IPv6 or IPv4, it handles it automatically. So I don't have like a DMZ where I can just connect to things directly from inside my infrastructure. I don't allow that because who knows what IoT devices may end up on my LAN someday. I can't really control that, So I just make sure that nothing goes over the wire unencrypted.
Yeah. No, I just realized the one thing I actually really require it for is our lab that we run. So a lot of my Red Hat demos and my AAP and all of like my Red Hat stuff lives inside of there, and I don't necessarily want any of that stuff directly internet accessible. So I go across a tunnel to get to that stuff. But even then, you could use. There's a lot of different tunneling technologies you could use.
I've taken to getting some people really upset with me because I call everything a tunnel anymore. Telnet is just an ASCII tunnel. You encapsulate it on one part of the network and shove it across, and it gets to the other side, it pulls it out. Whether it's doing it at an application level, whether you grab a frame as it comes in and slap an MPLS label on it and do a tunnel, a martini or a Kampala tunnel across something, or if you're doing VXLAN with an VPN signal, doesn't matter. You're still tunneling things all over the place. And instead of talking to people about, oh, I built this this underlay and we do this overlay stuff, it's like, yeah, I built an underlay. It's called the internet. I do things from end to end, and I encapsulate based on IP address, and I can do whatever I want. And as long as you let me do large MTU across your network, I have very little problems with anything. But it's all a tunnel.
There's an interesting point that Vint Cerf made, I believe, when he was talking about the design of TCP. He designed the original protocol there on top of IP, and essentially the flaw that it has, and one of the reasons that we even had to do things like apart from the addressing space issue of needing more space than IPv4 could give us, but the flaw that it has is it does not distinguish the session itself. Because if you have a unique session ID then doesn't matter what the endpoints are. So things like QUIC over UDP have essentially tacked that on top of IP. But if IP had originally supported it, then you're quite right. You'd have a tunnel identifier on either end, and you would been good to go. And it would have been portable,
and, yep,
movable,
you could,
persistent, whatever you want.
yep, you can shut things down and walk over someplace else, jump on a different Wi-Fi network, and it wouldn't matter because
But we live and learn. You know, it was too late to go back and fix it once you realize the problem. And so amazingly, it still continues to work. We put these other layers on top of it.
Don't we have Mosh? Is that what that is?
I love Mosh. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm not familiar with Mosh. Explain that
So
to
it's
me.
mobile shells, mobile SSH. So basically, it's SSH over UDP. So you connect your Mosh session. It's still running SSH. You know, it's still the same encryption libraries, but it's completely resumable wherever you are. You know, it's all UDP, and then the combination of Mosh plus tmux is really nice. So yeah, it's completely session agnostic and resumable. Yeah.
All right. Explain to the people what tmux is.
tmux is a way to have a resumable session that's local to a particular machine. Because normally, if that connection gets broken, so for example, you SSH into something and you start some processes, if that TCP connection is broken or reset, those processes die on the far end. There's no terminal for them to write to. They close. So tmux is similar to Screen in that it provides like a virtual terminal on the remote system that you can attach and detach from and set up, windowing and additional panes and do all kinds of fun stuff in terms of resumability and shared sessions. So it allows you to have a persistent session on the local machine, and then when you have the resumable persistent connection with something like SSH or Mosh. I mean, you can still do, John, like I could just SSH back into the machine and resume my tmux session.
Yeah.
But Mosh makes one.
Well, I was going to ask you.
That cuts one step down on that whole process.
I was going to ask you. Opening a single session between it kind of sounds like HTTP 2. Isn't that what that's all about? No, I don't want to go.
In terms of muxing, yeah. What where I haven't yet gotten this fully integrated in my workflow yet is with Claude, because I'm having to use fancier terminals with Claude, and I'm using the Claude remote control systems. Like I've got my phone, I can go monitor the sessions and connect to them. So I don't have a perfectly resumable remote system yet for Claude, but for everything else, yeah.
With my Claude Code, I like doing it on just my local machine and giving it access to SSH into those remote resources. So it'll just be running in there. So if anything does happen, it still has memory of what was going on, and it can pick up and resume. So it makes life a little easier.
I should probably sandbox that. That'd be the next step, is then just sandbox that, make that resumable.
Yeah, for sure.
Make sure you can restore everything.
Very interesting. Man, you guys are taking me down some awesome rabbit holes today. I love it.
Agenda. What's an agenda?
Yeah, well, we've only got like 12 minutes left. So we basically, at the rate we're going, we can only talk about
for next time.
100%. Yeah, good, man. Good. So I'll pick this one because this was one that actually involved you two cats earlier. And John, you were asking about like, what's the average rule of thumb of how much bandwidth you need per subscriber in kind of I guess like in an eyeball network, right? Like where you have like
eyeball network.
Yeah, you have like you're an internet service provider and you have customers. Because that was really interesting. As soon as you asked that, I was like, I don't know anymore. I feel like I've been out of the game long enough where I can't really remember. And you guys went down a little conversation piece that I found really interesting.
John, what sparked that? Were you thinking about like if you grow beyond a certain size, you're expecting it to drop?
No, what I'm looking at is I'm having a difficult time explaining to policy type people the breadth of what actually happens on a network. The piece that angers me the most is people getting taxpayer money to build what they're calling middle mile fiber, which, I've been driving down the road with policy people and I look at one side of the road and they say, hey, there's fresh fiber over there. And they're like, oh yeah, that's Joey's. He just got that for middle mile. I said, well, what's wrong with the fiber that's 30 feet above him on those aerial there? And they said, oh, well, there's fiber already there. I said, well, yeah. And what about the fiber buried on the other side of the road that I know is 288 count and there's only 4 strands in it. Why can't they use any of those? And the answer is we're not building middle mile fiber. We are subsidizing people's footprint. And so people don't
You mean their last
grasp
mile footprint, correct?
not the last mile, the middle mile.
Oh, the middle mile. Okay.
We're getting multiple builds in the middle mile because actually the smaller LECs are doing a great job of building last mile into their customers and aggregating in the cities they're in, but they have a hard time getting from, small rural town to
Back
the
to an
next
ISP,
town,
for example.
or 4 or 5 over. And sometimes they have to cross over 4 or 5 different territories. And people seem to think that, in a large urban area, middle mile is dark fiber I can go buy to jump over different areas. And in the rural areas, we don't have that. What we have is a bunch of people scrambling to build vertical integration again and again on the same paths. And I don't have any problem with that. If you can do that with your business, go for it. You get to monopolize that all you want, use it any way you want, but don't do it on my taxpayer dollars. So trying to bridge that gap of a pair of fiber I can use for 100 meg,
Almost
1 gig,
capacity.
10 gig, 100 gig, 400 gig, 800 gig, 1.6 terabyte, 1.6 times 80. And I've actually seen some of the smaller entities, when they've built out some fiber, get a trade from a carrier. The carrier said, if you let us use that dark fiber for this 22 miles, we'll give you a 10 gig connection on the internet. And they're going, what? We can get 10 gig just for the use of this. That's awesome. Not realizing
what an IRU is worth.
Yes. They have, they don't know it. And the policy people don't know it. So I try to explain that to them. And then they start asking about, well, why do we need these big pipes? And I have to explain to them, well, we want the big pipes so that people get on and off from an access level. I jump on, grab what I need, and get out of the way in the shortest amount of time possible. But on average, what do people use? If I have 1,000 people that I'm aggregating, I can probably take care of all of them with a 5 gig upstream.
Easily.
And people don't quite grasp it. Then why do we all need 1 gig
to the home? You're right. Yeah. Yeah.
And,
we were asked a lot of these questions at Preseem, John, when BEAD was in development and when they were kind of fine tuning the rules afterward. And we were actually able to provide some insight into this. It kind of bit us a little bit in terms of a wireless industry where they didn't quite understand the point that you were making, John, which is that at the middle mile, you actually only need capacity for the customers that you served. And what they put into the BEAD requirements was that you build out essentially middle mile in order to provide 5 megabits per user across the entire potential market, which is not the way networks are built, particularly not competitive networks.
Yeah. And I live in a state that we basically have, there are 2 sets of fiber that I would call middle mile fiber. One of them was built in the late 90s, and most people can't use it because it ended up in a utility's hand. But there's some people that have long IRUs that were there before it even changed hands when the original owners went bankrupt. And the other one is one of the freshly built ones. It's a very short piece that one of the sovereign nations here owns. And they're actually approaching it as middle mile, saying, no, use this to get through us. We're more than happy to pay, you're giving us enough money to operate this and to help our people and to just keep moving. But aside from that, we don't have any, and we also don't have any long haul. We have long haul that goes through the state, but if you want to buy long haul, you have to buy the termination points.
Right.
So in New Mexico, you'd buy El Paso to Phoenix, or El Paso to Denver, or El Paso to, of all places, Stratford,
no one wants
Texas.
to split it somewhere else. Yeah.
If you pay for the long haul, then you have access to the huts along the way, and you can start building some middle mile based on that. But it's hard to explain that piece to the people. And the part I love is we're pushing more and more fiber further out into the area so that even if you can't get fiber to your house, someone can set up some of the new wireless pieces that actually get that last mile. Or you pick up some Starlink pieces. Or the Starlink one is another one that's hard to explain to people that, point to multi-point, you have some inherent limitations that go down to time slots and things of that nature. But bit by bit, we're getting better connectivity everywhere. So now people are starting to realize latency is the real factor.
I feel like we kind of buried the story this week, Greg, and I really should have mentioned this for the agenda earlier, is that this is the week that the FCC eliminated their goal of 1,000 down and 500 up. And online, there was, as a speed goal, right, long-term gigabit broadband goal, and there was a lot of furor online about how this is just, the kind of the end shitification of internet. And those of us who actually serve it understand that the truth is a bit more subtle than that. It's not just a political play. It really is about where you're spending your dollars. And if we want to keep spending dollars to go overbuild fiber in places that maybe already have stuff that's inaccessible, like John mentioned, and still fail to reach the people who don't actually even have, maybe 100 meg or a few hundred megs today, I guess Starlink is kind of covering that in most cases, just not cheaply.
Yeah, I was going to say the price makes it unattainable for a lot of people that live in rural communities. They
I'm on
tend to
Starlink
be
here.
lower income.
That's what I'm
earners.
on.
Yeah.
I'm not lower income, but this is all I can get that is truly unmetered here in Anchorage.
Yeah.
So, John, we do have numbers on that, and I really encourage you to use what we have put out for the industry as much as possible for when it helps you in explaining those kind of policy questions. That's exactly why we do that at Preseem, is to say, hey, here are hundreds of ISPs globally that you can compare and say what's actually sane, what's realistic, and even to say like what doesn't meet people's needs, because we're very blunt about that. We're saying if you're not doing a good job, here's what this looks like. If you're doing a good job, here's what it looks like.
And I liked how you shared a couple of the Preseem slides you guys have in some of your
You want to do
presentations.
that, Greg? I've got it here.
Why?
I've got it. Just show one. I'll just show one.
Boy, dude snapped into his Preseem kit real fast.
I wear the
popped it. But no. I really liked how you shared that in the Little Brothers WISP Slack, because it was really interesting to see the correlations of here the internet speeds being offered, and then here's how much these people actually utilize. Yeah. So it was really interesting to see those curves and what was one of the to get double, or rather
the usage.
Yeah, you actually you have
to quadruple the plan speed. And it's kind of what you're saying, John, about get on and get off. So if we were looking at like peak speeds, often that when you start doing gigabit, that's usually going to be constrained by some other part of the network, usually your Wi-Fi in the home. Mm-hmm. So even offering gigabit doesn't necessarily mean 10 times the experience for somebody who's coming from a 100 meg connection. Most of the time, that's not the case. So what we do look at in the report is just bulk usage over time, because that's easier to assess, where we can say, well, clearly if you had more demand, you would use more when the constraint is lifted. And so you can say, well, clearly the constraint is lifted if you can get a gigabit, right? And the fact is that we just don't have applications for this today. I mean, Jason Livengood from Comcast said the only consumer application we have today for gigabit is a speed test. We just don't have applications that can consume it and provide a meaningful way. And I think AI is going to make that even more dramatic as we start doing more local models and local generation. Greg, I think the amount of bandwidth that you need to generate a movie in real time that's customized to you is going to be negligible compared to even the 25 meg 4K stream we're doing today.
Well, I think too, it's like the streamers are continuing to improve their algorithms for distribution of video, right? Like we're continuing to be able to transmit video at a very high quality at a lower
We've reached
throughput.
The limits of what we need for the human perception.
Yeah. So we've done a really good job. This is interesting because I was at like a fiber conference like 15 years ago, and they were talking about, how we need to get rid of all this copper that's already there. And like even inside your building, you don't need copper drop. I mean, obviously, I was at a fiber convention. They were like, yeah, get rid of all, we need to move to fiber to all the desktops because they're not gonna be able to support the bandwidth. I was like, I just had to ask the guy like afterwards. I wasn't going to be a dick in front of the, the whole crowd, but it's like, we keep coming up with more ways to make things efficient, and somehow we've stretched copper to the distances we are at. Do you really feel like that's something that, and he was trying to defend his position, but like here we are 15 years later, still using copper just fine, still using IPv4, John. Yeah. No, I think, it's like once we put something, what do they say? A temporary fix is the most permanent solution. So sometimes we put something in there and it just stays. But yeah, it's like, to your point, like we're constantly getting more efficient on how we can transmit information. And so, yeah, like you're saying, that demand just isn't there. Although it makes me, I saw something today, they were talking about, being able to like own physical media and how you can't necessarily trust anything that you don't physically own. What was it, like PlayStation Network or somebody just pulled a bunch of people's access to like movies they had bought. They're like, sorry. And
it's happened repeatedly, but
yeah. So it's just in one of those reminders. It said, if purchasing something doesn't mean you own it, then obviously piracy doesn't mean you're stealing it. So
right.
It's like, or it's the old internet cartoon where somebody like Hulu comes out, and so the guy takes his pirate hat off and he puts it away, and then now there's 18 different streaming platforms you have to get access to, and you see him pick up his pirate hat and dust it off and put it back on his head. So yeah, maybe the days of pirating things are coming back. I don't know. So we're gonna need more bandwidth.
I just think it's going to be locally generated, as in you can already, it's going to be real time, and it's going to be whatever you want, because everything's derivative. They've already proven that you can't copyright the output of an LLM. So it's just going to be, hey, customize. They're already, let's just say adult entertainment is already doing this, right? It just hasn't reached it down to Disney Plus yet.
Dude, that's what I was thinking. I was like, what does that mean for OnlyFans when you can truly generate whatever you want, like right now?
I think actually OnlyFans is probably more a case of humans still connecting with humans as a majority, rather than with like, I mean, I don't have any personal experience of this.
Yeah,
I'm just saying the cost of let's say digitally mediated interactions has dropped so low that the only thing that can possibly result from it is that human interactions will become more valuable. And that's everywhere. People still wanting to make music, get together, sing, sit around a campfire. We can go take our hats off and touch some grass.
You know what? I truly hope that. I genuinely do. Like that is a wish in my heart. Yeah. But it also makes me wonder, is that us being okay boomers? Like the people that are born into it and they grow up with like AI slop and they're the ones who are consumers of that. Will they have that same concern? Will they really even care? I don't know.
We'll find out.
Here's hoping, man. Yeah, definitely. So if you had to put a rule of thumb on it of X number of megabits per second per customer on an eyeball network, what's a good safe one for you, Jeremy?
So, last year it was still the majority between 3 and 4, with like the 99th percentile being like 10 megabits per second at peak busy hour load. So if you were to take that number, John, that you said, okay, say you're going to sell a 1 gig plan. So you need at least 1 gig to sell the first plan. And then you'd need 10 megabits for each additional subscriber. That's still only roughly a 10 gig connection to serve 1,000 people a 1 gig plan at some of the highest consumption that we've seen globally. So I think currently we're expecting growth to be about 8 or 9% a year. So that number will keep creeping up. So if you're planning a network build, you're saying, here's the life of the build and my prospective take in terms of number of subscribers, it's pretty easy to do that math these days because the rate of growth, well, not even quite that, because the rate of growth is slowing. We saw this first in mobile networks in Europe, but we're beginning to see it here on this side as well, that the applications just aren't there. You can only stream so many hours a day. And so the rate of growth, everyone was like, this is going to continue growing in perpetuity. It does flatten off. That was kind of the topic we didn't get to, Greg, about the bot traffic. I was like, well, a current sample is not a full predictor of the future.
Yeah, for sure. All right.
But Jeremy, Preseem did exactly what I needed. I have looked at those numbers that you've put out several different times, and every time I look at them and go, wait a second, why are they reporting it that way? And then I realize what it's saying. It's like, oh, that's exactly what I'm looking for, and it shows things over time. And it's been, last couple of years, I've been telling the policymakers, look, right, 3 years ago, it's like 3 meg. Now
I feel like it's important to have like this middle. If you think of like how Ookla reports their stuff and how Comcast reports their stuff, I feel like there needs to be somebody in between who's like saying both the subscriber and the operator experience. How can we put those things together and come up with like the truth about what is it that people actually need?
A neutral third party, because to me the providers showing big numbers makes them feel like, oh, we've got this big robust network, so they want
it justifies the capital.
That's what that's they want to make it sound cool. So somebody that's like, hey, here's real world data that we're just graphing of actual utilization to subscribers. To me, that feels so much more useful than somebody else's hype machine or marketing engine spitting stuff out.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
All right, fellas. Well, we have already hit the hour mark, and I desperately try and keep them at an hour if we can. Dude, you guys are freaking smart. I love it.
Stop, Greg.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm comparing you to myself, so it's a really low bar, dude. So it's not that big a deal. Don't get an inflated ego over it. But no. Right here at the end, I'd like to ask everybody how you'd like to have people interact. Captain Preseem, how would you have people interact with you on the internet?
You can find me on LinkedIn. I generally don't post a lot on social media. I post almost nothing on LinkedIn, but you can definitely find me there. I'm Jeremy Austin or jeremy@preseem.com. It's a good way to get in touch with me, and I always answer my emails.
All right, awesome. John, how are people going to find you, dude?
Well, anymore, LinkedIn is probably the best way to find almost anyone.
Yeah. Aren't you, isn't there some kind of network user group thing coming up soon for you guys, or it already happened?
September 17th, we are going to have the 4th ABQ NOG.
Nice.
Which is going to be a lot of fun. Every year, I always hope and pray that we can get a dozen or maybe 20 people, and I've got 45 or so signed up at the moment. We usually get to about 60 or 80. This year, we're doing something really special. Does anybody know about the US NUA, the Network User Alliance? I can't remember what the A stands for. They've been running around and building up NUGs, network user groups, in all the different states. And so we're going to have the inaugural New Mexico one here as essentially a social after the NOG. So if you're anywhere near Albuquerque on September 17th, 2026, come on by. Everything's free. We just want to have people. We're trying to get more people to think about things at an ASN level. Just that's the NOG world, and the NUG world is just let's go talk about networking.
That's cool.
Interesting.
There's never a better time to make friends than over a couple of beers or something like that. I'll tell you what, like meeting you folks, I've literally, we've never met in person, have we, John?
We have not.
No,
I don't think I've met either of you in person.
Right.
Now, you're not missing anything with Jeremy, but with me, I'm a pretty fun guy. No,
are we gonna see you in Vegas, John?
Depends. It's close enough. I would drive.
Not far for you. Yeah. I mean, I'm coming from Alaska. What's your excuse, right?
I generally get sucked into other things that people are asking me to drive across New Mexico the opposite way to go. I don't know. When people run into problems, they're like trying to figure out how to do it within the state. A lot of the work I do is with the state office of broadband, and a lot of things are tied up in process and procedure and all of those pieces. And I'm a contractor. So when somebody says, hey, how are we going to get these things shipped out to 5 places and, plug the SIM cards in, I just go jump in the car and drive and go take care of it in a day instead of 5 days of people trying to figure out how to do it and write up the procedure. And
so you're the IT guy that says move, and then you just get in there and take care of it.
Yeah, I try and tell people that if I'm in, like I said earlier, if I'm involved in the real process, you're probably doing something wrong, but I'm more than happy to allow you to task me for things that you need done quickly.
That's dope. And honestly, I feel like it's underrated, actually, meeting people in person and then making these connections. It has been such a boon for me to like have all of you smart guys that I could just reach out to. So that's one of the...
It's a great community.
Oh, 100%.
I learn something every day.
So you can find me, gregsoul.com. I still am blogging. I'm doing mostly automation stuff these days. It's mostly going to be focused on things here. I would say in the near future, probably on like Red Hat's Lightwell project, where they're essentially patching every open source project that has ever existed. It's pretty wild. They're dedicating like $5 billion to it and a whole bunch of engineering.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts. But yeah, I'm going to be like doing automation integrations with that stuff. Also, you can find me on the Little Brothers WISP. I would say that's probably one of the better, or you can just email me, greg@gregshole.com. But yeah, Little Brothers WISP, pop on patreon.com/Brothers WISP. You find us in there, all these knuckleheads.
I can recommend it.
Yeah, for sure. Questions, comments, always love having them. What's interesting is I wrote a program that helps me chop up and post these clips, and these clips have been going absolutely insane. One of them,
awesome.
No lie, got 74,000 views.
That's cool.
So it's crazy. It's crazy. Like, I didn't expect that, but you guys you're going to be social media famous here in a couple minutes.
Awesome.
So it's a brave new world. You're both going to be on TikTok. I hope you're ready.
All right, Greg.
Yeah, no synchronized dances.
You just have to tell me about it because I still don't have that app on my phone.
All right, but yeah, any questions, comments? I had a theoretical in here that I wanted to get to you guys, but I genuinely think we probably would have talked a half hour on just that theoretical.
I was dreading that. So.
Oh, really? I love that stuff. I love.
No, I would have been happy to engage on it. It was like just in terms of how much of the agenda it would have taken.
Yes. So maybe we'll save that one, or maybe we'll just do a little shorty on that. I say shorty. It's going to turn into 30 minutes.
Dedicated.
Talk about that. Sure. That would be a really fun one to talk about. So I'm going to tease. I'm not going to actually tell anybody.
I know
what it is.
All right. Secret.
So yeah,
watch the space.
Thank you guys for joining, and thank you everybody for listening. And
thanks,
we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Greg. See you.
Let me hit stop real quick.